Okay, so nothing went wrong. Tesla didn't break anything. Delivery went smooth. So there's no horror stories. But the first week still surprised me. Not because anything went bad, but because daily life living with this car was way different than I expected. And if you're about to take delivery of a Tesla and this is your first EV, well, these are the things that I wish somebody had told me before the first week. Because the weirdest part about Tesla ownership isn't the technology. It's how your habit starts to change without you even realizing it. And the biggest surprise for me didn't even happen until day 5. When people talk about Tesla online, they usually talk about specs, acceleration, software features, charging speeds, and range. But almost nobody talks about what it's like to live with the car day to day. And that's where the real adjustment happens, especially if you're coming from a regular gas car. For me, the first week wasn't about learning new buttons or new features. For me, it was about rewiring small habits I've had for years. Things like how I drive, how I think about charging, and how you interact with the car before you even get inside. And some of those changes happen really fast. The first thing that caught me off guard was realizing that the car isn't finished on delivery day. You can drive it immediately, there's nothing wrong, everything works just fine. But the car isn't really yours yet, because the real setup happens after you start living with it. You start adjusting things like driver profile, seating position, steering feel, mirrors, regenerative braking settings. And those things keep evolving over time. You make one small adjustment, you drive it for a little bit, and then you come back and tweak it again. And slowly, the car starts to feel a little more dialed in for you. So delivery day isn't really the finish line, it's more like a handoff. And Tesla ownership actually starts after that. Another thing that feels strange if you've never owned a Tesla is how quickly the software can change. In the first week, you might see small things like small interface tweaks, minor feature updates, and small improvements on how things behave. Nothing dramatic, but it makes you realize that the car is not a finished product. It's more like something that keeps evolving, which is very different than a traditional car. Normally you buy a car and that's normally the version that you end up driving for the next 5 to 10 years. With Tesla, it's not like that at all. With Tesla, the car continuously evolves and learns new tricks over time. Now this one surprised me the most in terms of daily driving. One pedal driving. At first it feels a little weird. You let off the foot off the accelerator, and even that you'll get out of the habit of calling it a gas pedal. The car gradually slows down, but after a couple of days, something interesting happens. Your brain starts adjusting and you begin to drive smoother. Stop and go traffic feels way easier, and weirdly, you feel less mentally tired after driving, especially if you deal with a lot of traffic. I didn't expect that part. It's not about going fast. It's about removing these tiny little efforts that normally you don't even think about, but they make you really tired after a long drive. Now this is where the first week gets interesting, because for most new owners, charging anxiety peaks during the first few days. You start checking the app constantly, you look at the battery percentage, you start doing mental calculations, and you start asking yourself how much battery or how many miles do I have left on this battery? How much range do I have left? How much range do I have left? How much range do I have? And for a few days, it feels like something you need to constantly be monitoring. But then something funny happens. Usually around day 4, day 5, you realize that you barely start thinking about it, especially if you're charging at home, because plugging in becomes just another part of the routine. It's almost like when you charge your phone overnight, and suddenly the thing you've been worrying the most about becomes the thing you don't even think about anymore. Another subtle shift that happens with quiet. Yes, electric cars are obviously quieter, everyone knows that, but what surprised me was how much more aware you are while you're driving. You notice things more. You hear music differently. Your podcast sounds clearer. You notice how much more louder the cars around you are. And sometimes you catch yourself driving a bit calmer, not because the car forces you to, but because the whole experience feels smoother. It's one of those changes that's hard to explain until you've driven the car for a bit. Another habit that surprised me is how often you interact with the Tesla app. At first, it's practical things. You start checking your charge levels. You unlock and lock your car using the actual Tesla app because you're so used to using a key fob to lock the car or unlock the car. But pretty quickly, that part becomes just a routine. You might even precondition the cabin before getting in. Turn the air on if it's hot outside, or turn the heat on if it's cold outside. You check your car from inside the house, or glance at the battery percentage the same way you check your phone battery. And eventually it becomes normal. The car isn't something you just drive, it's something you interact with throughout the day. But the biggest surprise for me was how quickly everything stopped feeling new. By the end of the first week, I wasn't thinking about the technology anymore. I wasn't analyzing everything every time. The car just felt normal. And honestly, that's probably the best outcome you can have. The biggest adjustment with a Tesla isn't about the learning curve or how quickly or how slow you're going to learn the car. It's about how fast the learning curve just disappears. Now, none of this means that Tesla ownership is perfect. There are some trade-offs. The car expects you to explore things over time, and Tesla doesn't explain everything up front before delivery day. And software updates means that the car keeps changing over time, and some people love that. Some people prefer the car to stay exactly the same, so it really depends on what kind of driver you are. So if you like discovering new features and adapting to new technology, Tesla ownership feels natural and really exciting. But if you want everything to be explained all on day one, the first week of Tesla ownership is going to feel really weird. For me though, the biggest takeaway after the first week is simple. Nothing went wrong, but a lot of my habits changed faster than I expected. And once those habits settled in, owning a Tesla car just felt normal. Like driving another car. In this next video, I want to talk about something that Tesla doesn't explain before delivery day. And once you understand that, delivery day just feels better.